Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cognition Podcast. As always, I'm Hutch, one of your co-hosts. I'm the author of The Language of Deception and also an innovation principal at Trace3.
And I am Len Noe, technical evangelist for CyberArk and author of the upcoming book, Human Hack, My Life and Lessons as the World's First Augmented Ethical Hacker. And today we actually have a special guest with us today. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, man?
Hi, my name is Amar Sonik. I go by the name of Amar or Sonik. I work for a healthcare company as a DevOps engineer. I'm also one of the organizers for BSides Singapore, which is happening on the 20th of September.
Rock on.
Awesome. Yeah, great to have you, Sonic.
It's been a week, man. It has been a week.
Oh, yeah, it has.
Yep. So today we are going to talk about some really interesting perspectives that Sonic has on APTs, or advanced persistent threats, within the cybersecurity space. But of course, before we do that, we are going to do the usual routine of talking about some of the stuff we've seen in the news since our last episode. And as Lynn mentioned, it has been an interesting one. So obviously, if you haven't been living under a rock, you probably are well aware of the Crowdstrike outage. We obviously have to discuss that. And in addition to that, we're also going to talk about a recent ad that Microsoft released saying that now with AI, you can take 3 meetings at once.
And finally, the idea, Hutch and I have been talking about this over and over again for episodes after episodes. We are now seeing AI get into politics, but not in the way that you would expect.
Yep. Wow. So let's dive in. So for our first story, of course, is Microsoft. Always tactful with their advertisements. So this was an interesting one. There was a couple news articles that came out pointing to a recent ad that Microsoft had where they bragged about the fact that now with Copilot, you can enjoy the dystopian future of taking not just 1 meeting at a time during the day, but 3 meetings at once. And so I actually tried to browse to this ad based on the link. And while the ad was still there, that portion of it didn't appear to be there. So it did seem like they realized that that may not be the angle they really want to push out. But I don't know. Are you guys excited about the future when you hear that?
Man, but I have a hard enough time not double booking myself to begin with. And to be honest, anybody that's listened to our show before knows I am like the true dystopian future looking guy. I don't like the fact that I even have Copilot on my system. Not only the company that I work for, they recently implemented it. And so now I get that little, "Hi, I'm AI. Would you like me to help you?" It's like, man, if I wanted your help, I would have asked for it in the first place. Yeah. But no, you want to talk about a quick way to see, more people go, can we just switch to Linux, please?
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, so for me, when I look at this, I think that there is potentially some value in getting notes captured. To your point, Lynn, there is the question of, do I really want that surveillance and the cost-benefit analysis of that? But that aside, if you're willing to accept that, I think there's some value in capturing notes. But the idea of having that, completely relying on that note taker and being able to only be 1/3 of the way checked in to each of your different calls really seems suboptimal to me. And I think it would come off to any of the people that you're meeting that you are only partially invested in that call, that you're not really present in the conversation. And I think really that is a detriment to progress within an organization more than it's a value add.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because the thing is, think about it. If you're joining a meeting and then you're double book and you're triple book right now. Now with the fact that you can join 3 meetings at one time, getting the details of one meeting and then coming out from there and then going, "Hey, did you catch what so-and-so was saying about the other meeting? I kind of thought that, my Copilot was going to grab all the information from there, and feed it back to me in a nice, properly formatted minute format. And then come to find out, I'm like, oh, yeah, you kind of
Yeah.
missed some of that.
One thing that I can say is once I think anybody that's been in the industry as long as we have understands that once management realizes that they can put additional workload on someone and they can handle it, it goes from being the exception to the rule. And the other thing that when it comes to the AI enablement that really makes me start to question is if we start seeing a big uptick in productivity, is this going to equate to a limiting or a lessening of manpower and headcount? And is the idea that we're going to be able to do this going to become the expectation?
Yeah, and I think that's the real risk I wonder if this has anything to do with the fact that we are seeing more and more investor concerns about getting any kind of real financial returns out of AI. And maybe this is Microsoft's way of changing the expectations of leadership, but I do think that it's a problematic precedent that is only going to cause issues. I think we've all been in that meeting where maybe for whatever reason we're not fully paying attention, and then somebody puts us on the spot about something, and then we have to pretend that either our microphone wasn't working or that we didn't hear them properly. Yeah, exactly. And so now trying to juggle 3 calls, I think those situations are going to become way more common.
And the last thing I have to say on this news point is, we've had the discussions of quality over quantity on so many different topics, but to me, that's what this really does boil down to is, do you want to do 3 half-ass calls or do you want to do 1 call really well?
Third-ass calls.
Third-ass calls.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So right. I want to kick this one off because for the record, I got completely hosed by this. For anybody that is unaware, I actually spent not this last week, but the week before down in Melbourne, Australia, doing some events. And let me tell you, when you're sitting in your hotel room on Friday afternoon in Melbourne, you're planning to leave to go home Saturday morning bright and early, and then you get this email from the airlines going, yeah, you ain't going nowhere. So it was actually kind of a unique situation for me because being in Australia, I was 15 and a half hours ahead of the US. So while you guys were sleeping, I was researching this and I was watching it as it was unfolding. And you want to talk about watching a train wreck in slow motion. The one thing, we can all agree on, we know what happened. This being the largest outage in history, this was all due to a issue of bad programming and even worse quality control in terms of validation of your code. It does not get any worse than this.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I actually remember where I was during this too. We were actually taking a red eye back home from Montana. And so, unlike you, it actually did not delay our flights. We were in the air whenever this happened. And so I was disconnected. I had no clue what was going on. But when we landed, we walked through the airports and there were just cots set up everywhere for people just sleeping, I guess, because of their delayed flights. So we just dodged the bullet.
Yeah, that one was just absolute nuts. I don't know if you're aware, but they grounded everything in Australia, period. There was nothing. If you were in the air, you were fine. But once you landed, you're done. On top of that, like I said, I had 15 and a half hours on you guys, but none of the restaurant credit card transaction machines were working. None of the point of sales. The Hyatt that I was staying in Melbourne was having issues with their software for reservations, and this we can beat this to death, but this was simple programming error, and the fact that it took down over 8 billion Windows boxes.
Yeah, I didn't see the exact number, but I know that it was massive. Sonic, did you get to deal with any blue screen of death?
I fortunately did not have experience with that, but my sister-in-law had, experienced that, and she was on the phone with tech support, and it was quite a while before she actually got her computer fixed. And
were you tech support for her? Because I know in the technical one in the family, I'm tech support for everyone else in my family.
Yeah, I'll be the first to throw myself under the bus. It's always like, yeah, but hey, I need help. You know, like, have you experienced with this
Absolutely.
before?
Yep, exactly.
And
Or
then I
can you hack into my girlfriend or boyfriend's Facebook?
But I was giving her the solution that there was everyone else was piling on. Yeah, go to this website, and like it's on Reddit and whatnot. And it was and after that the memes started coming out.
Yeah, there were some
everyone
good
just
ones.
started piling on.
So I will say the one thing that stuck out to me about this is I was reading kind of the recap of the specifics related to how this took place. And according to CrowdStrike, it was an automated QA testing process. So for me, I think of all the takeaways, we are now living in a world where increasingly we are offloading autonomous tasks to automation, AI, and this really, for me, just goes to show that without a human in the loop, those automated processes, when they fail, especially as we become increasingly more interconnected, it can be catastrophic.
And the one thing that a lot of people aren't really talking about, and the angle I was looking at, yeah, CrowdStrike does have contracts for limitation of liability, but that does not include negligence, to my understanding. And I'm not a lawyer and I'm not giving legal advice, but, there comes, even with, non-competes, limited liability, there's always that point of, negligence that no matter what you sign. And I'm curious to see what CrowdStrike is going to look like as far as a global entity and its position a year from now as a result of this.
It just begs to question, like how much to a point do you want to automate and keep that automation there, because no matter how much you automate, you still need human intervention, and you need the human interaction to ensure, okay, this is the QC is going on, everything is fine and dandy, and not leave. Like speaking as a DevOps myself, like you kind of want to hold back on full scale automation.
For sure. And I think that there is a place for using automation to scale up, but I think that you have to have those risk management procedures in place where you have a full understanding of the possible negative outcomes that could happen without a human in the loop, and have additional layers of control to address those, which didn't seem to be the case here.
Well, let's hope that, we've all learned a lesson. And the other point that, I've heard a lot about is this. I love how they're trying to show this as an example for supply chain issues. This was not an attack, but it still does show that whole trickle down effect of larger entities. And I don't know about you guys, but one of the conversations I've been hearing is how can we potentially almost load balance, SaaS applications like this?
Yeah, I think it does definitely show the risk of a failure of even one piece in the larger complex systems that we're working with these days. It was fascinating to me how many, I think that outside of the cybersecurity world, before this happened, I think very few people had knowledge of what CrowdStrike was. And
now
they definitely have
know who CrowdStrike is.
They got name recognition now.
All the wrong reasons.
Yep, exactly.
But we don't need to pile in anymore.
It probably must be, now it's hard picking up the pieces from there.
Yep, it's going to be.
So how about this one, Hutch? Hutch, if you're not new to the podcast, is our resident AI LLM expert. You used in your book, The Language of Deception, you showed how AI can be used to weaponize and, basically sniff PII and take advantage of people's, vulnerabilities. And now we're seeing an actual AI candidate for parliament.
If you haven't seen the news, obviously you can check the show notes. If not, just Google AI candidate for UK
or just
Parliament.
AI Steve.
Or yeah, AI Steve. This is fascinating. A little bit concerning. I don't know if this is more intended to be a gimmick just because they can. I don't know if they're taking this serious and actually think they have a chance of winning
serious. They are being 100% serious about this. AI Steve is actually represented by the Sussex businessman Steve, and I'm going to butcher this guy's last name, Endicott. And the AI candidate will appear directly next to his name on the actual ballots. And Endicott is the chairman of Neural Voice, a company that creates personalized voice assistants for businesses. And according to their spin on this is that the AI can humanize the politics. And if you go out and you look at some of the ads that AI Steve has put out, they kind of made a caricature almost of the actual politician. And he's using this technology to try and get past having to have the conversations, and it's being more well accepted than an actual human talking. And I think to your point, Hutch, it's probably part politics, part advertising, but it's a really unique way. And it makes me wonder if there's human Steve and then AI Steve, what do they do if AI Steve actually gets elected and biological real Steve doesn't?
Yeah. The future is weird. I don't. Yeah, it's hard to even know what to make of this. I mean, I think there's an interesting component to this where if you look at some studies that have been performed, there is a level of at least the appearance of empathy that comes out of these systems that potentially even exceeds what humans are capable of. So I do think politics are toxic. So maybe this isn't the worst thing in the world. Politicians are not. I mean, in most cases, there's some outliers, but they're exactly that. They're let's
think about this for 1 second, Hutch. If we look at the dystopian future that we always talk about, it's the AIs trying to control humanity because we're bound to destroy ourselves, and we're all worried about like an AI the machines taking over like Terminator. What happens when you vote them in?
Yeah,
we don't need to worry about Skynet coming down and taking over. We're just going to vote them into office, man.
The AIs were like, this is the easiest revolution ever. Just handing it over to us.
And the weird thing is we keep doing it.
And the real person be like, hey, I was the one that was helping you behind. You get out of the way.
I mean, if this is what, the singularity looks like, I think we're all in real big trouble.
It does beg the question of how do you make sure that human Steve is not pulling the strings of AI Steve?
AI Steve, yeah.
And then let's take it one step further. Okay, is AI Steve backed by Microsoft? Is it AI Steve backed by Google? Is AI Steve backed by OpenAI? Who owns the politician? At this, we've all talked about having, owning politicians as something in terms of corruption. But what about when there's a company that literally owns him?
But look at it this way, AI Steve can jump into 3 meetings at one.
There you go. He'll be super productive.
Yeah.
So,
with this, I will be super productive. Don't worry.
AI Steve can probably do 8 calls at once, not just 3.
Oh yeah, and he'll be able to have a minute done by 0800 hours right in on your desk.
Well, I for one am thrilled to see that it's not the United States that is at the forefront of ridiculous politics this time.
So for those of us that have been here a while or watched Hutch longer than me, that we don't do a lot of guests, but we're going to be changing that. So I have been hanging out with our friend Sonic here, helping him, guiding him a little bit. And why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about number one, where can somebody see this actual presentation? Because we're just going to kind of skim through it and kind of hit the high points. And what is it that what's the message that you're trying to get out to everyone?
Okay, so I'll be doing this presentation at HUSACon in September 23rd. The message I'm bringing to the masses is the APT, it's a lie.
Okay, that's a very bold statement.
And so actually, can we actually take a step back? And so we do have some audience that's in maybe technology or IT, but not in cybersecurity. Sonic, can you kind of give us a high level what is an APT?
Okay, basically, then an APT is a categorized as a nation-state actor or a
what does an APT mean?
Advanced persistent threat.
Okay. That's something that, we've heard a lot about, especially coming from, I don't know about you, Hutch, but usually when I hear APT, it's usually in some type of a release in regards to a major breach or an attack. So how do these APTs come into play? Like to Hutch's point, for those of our listeners that may not be cybersecurity, where would somebody come into contact with something like an APT? And beyond that, why is it important?
Okay, somebody will come into contact with APT via the news threads, or they hear something that's being published by social media, websites, various different news outlets, and it's very important because the thing is it's trying to tell you, like, hey, there's a group out there that's disrupting, and it's trying to stay hidden, stay dormant, and learn more about the way you function as business, and try to forcibly either, number one, take over or do some damage.
So these would be what in normal circles people would call the bad actors or the black hat type hackers.
They're more towards nation state, I would say.
Okay.
Black hat would probably be out to do lack of a better word, like petty theft, or try to
So these would be the groups that would be doing more like ransomware, extortionware, maybe going after critical infrastructure, things like that?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm assuming then that these would also be the same groups that, maybe if you, like, I don't know about you, but I've gotten a lot of these letters. Actually, I got one recently from a concert I went to where some vendor that I had used, they had compromised their data, and now my information has been leaked. So something along those lines of groups.
Hey, I got the Ticketmaster notification too.
You got it? What show did you go to?
I don't even remember.
That's what you get that's what I got for going to see Ghost and Amon Amarth. So these are just essentially the top tier bad guys is what it sounds like we're getting at.
Yep. Those are the top those are the top tiers. And it goes back into history as well, where it starts off, where.
So that was actually going to be my next question. When did the term APT, because it sounds like this is almost like in some ways giving somebody almost like a title, I'm hereby dubbing you as this, really important bad guy.
It's kind of like a crowning glory, but in a not so good sense.
So when did this first come about in terms of when did the APT become a thing?
Okay, it was back in I think in 2007 that we was coined. The phrase was coined by Colonel Greg Rattray. That was when he used it in the military.
Okay, so
And
this started from kind of a military designation.
Yep, it started from military designation, and he was using it to describe intelligence. Who are trying to gain.
Who are the adversaries?
Who are the adversaries, and who are trying to gain in and trying to find out more about and infiltrate and trying to find out more about plans, emails, of lead high-ranking officials, and also trying to find out more about military plans.
So, as I said earlier, anybody that's been around security has heard a lot of different things about APTs. So essentially at a high level, this is just a designation, almost like a way to give a name to an unknown attacker. Because I got to believe that, when we're being attacked, even when we do digital forensics and incident response, we can get the tools, the tactics, and the techniques that were used during the attack. We can blueprint the whole attack, but we don't necessarily know who it was that actually pulled the trigger to execute it, do we?
No, we don't. Because the thing is, many times you would read this in the news and you would see, okay, yeah, a certain nation state or threat actors was doing supply chain attacks, or they were hiding within the realm of emails, seeing messages go back and forth, and crafting zero-day exploit to embed that and send that across, and have data, opening up ports to let data stream back, and basically observers and waiting to see until they get enough information and then feed the information back to their counterparts, or to the higher up in the hierarchy.
So, Sonic, when you say that APTs are a lie, is it that while there are nation state activities, a lot of cases what is attributed to APTs is kind of just an assumption and may or may not be the case?
Yep, you hit the hammer on the head. Like,
what would be the incentive of attributing something to an APT if you don't actually know that that's the case? And kind of why I was asking that question is, when I'm thinking about it, it seems like there actually would be some financial incentives for making something seem like it was an APT when maybe it actually wasn't. And I can think of two scenarios where that may be the case. One, where a company is breached and they don't want to admit that it was a less sophisticated attack. So saying that it was an APT makes it sound like, oh, we didn't stand a chance. They had nation state level funding. They would have gotten through even if we did everything right in terms of security. So I think it becomes a very easy excuse that companies could potentially use to minimize their negligence. So I think there's that scenario. There's also, it seems like, the possibility that I know just based on conversations that I've had with organizations, so for anybody that isn't in cybersecurity, companies have cybersecurity insurance. Mm-hmm. So they pay extremely large premiums so that if a breach occurs, the costs of those breaches, which are often in the millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars for some of these bigger organizations, is covered. And one of the clauses for a lot of those cyber insurance companies is, we will not cover a nation state attack, or an act of war is the terms that's used in some cases. And so it seems like there's also a possible incentive for insurance companies to attribute attacks to nation states, because it gives them the loophole to say, we're not financially liable. We're not paying. And we all know that insurance companies, if they have a chance to step back and get out of it, they'll find any loophole they can. So are those...
If I can throw two more scenarios onto that, I can also look at it from the other side of the fence. If you're claiming something as an APT and you can potentially have the product that could solve whatever that particular group's signature type style attack, that could also be used as some type of propaganda to market product.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. And coming back, it just makes you wonder, like, okay, number one, who's the one that's giving this label? Okay, I dubbed the, like what Len was saying earlier on, I dubbed the to be APT some number. Or I right now it's even come down to naming, giving name like tiger or kitten, or, it's
Cozy
come to
Bear.
a cozy bear. It's come to animal naming convention. It's kind of like I mean, like, it's stereotyping. I mean, I don't mean to use that word, but it's gotten to that level. And say if you are a jackal, then you are more of a thief, of a petty thief.
Well, I think you're right. There definitely is, it seems like, some derogatory tropes that are in some of the naming conventions. I mean, if you're a Chinese threat actor, you're a panda.
If you're a Russian, you're a bear.
You're a bear. So
they're playing off of ethnic stereotypes in their naming conventions. To me, that almost just seems like an additional form of propaganda.
So I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that the source of the animal naming convention comes from CrowdStrike.
Exactly.
They have their adversary universe, they call it, which they actually try to do marketing based on like almost like the Marvel universe type thing. But I
mean, it's very interesting. I mean, one of the things that just came out 3 days ago was the fact that and to your point and what you're saying, the U.S. Department of Justice indicted a North Korean hacker for ransomware attacks on hospitals. So from what my understanding of what you're saying, Sonic, is up until the point where they had this one specific individual, this could have been an APT because we didn't know it to be anything but. But now that it's a single person, could that single person be an APT?
Exactly.
And I'm curious, is there any kind of official legal standard or anything that really defines what is required for attribution? Or is it just kind of everybody doing their best guess based on what they decide is helpful?
I don't know exactly how they derived to this, but
so wait a minute. I got to jump in on that one. So just going off of what Hutch just said, you mean this, and just so we're on the same page, if entity A, let's just say, does some type of ransomware attack, and entity B does the exact same attack, can they be judged differently? One can be an APT, one can be just something?
Oh yeah. I definitely agree with that.
So there's no criteria or ability to repeat in terms of, if you do A, B, and C, you will be considered an advanced persistent threat. There's nothing that hallmarks or basically defines what that is.
No.
Then why are we all listening to it?
That is a question that I keep, that was on top of my head, if there's no set criteria.
So who is making these designations? I'm assuming it's probably some group of entities that are the ones that are providing these designations.
I wish I had an answer for that, but it seems like, there are many different avenues that's coming, like we have one example, CrowdStrike is saying, it's APT so-and-so, or it's an animal name. And then all of a sudden you get another group that's saying, oh, we found out that this patent belongs to this group. It's coming from this country and it's coming from this group. So it's kind of conflicting, and there's no fixed rule on this. So that's why, when you take a step back and you're like, okay, who do we listen to? who do we listen to, and who is the one that's calling the shots? But if from the get-go, initially I thought, oh, okay, it's coming from the powers that be. But when I dig deep and I dig deeper and I looked around, I'm like, yeah, I don't think we have a real defined answer for this.
Yeah, I agree. I've done a decent amount of work in the past with threat intelligence, and one of the most challenging things with operating against various different threat intelligence feeds is that there is no consistency on naming convention is all over the place. In addition to that, you can't even reconcile it easy because attribution from one source may be completely different than from another. So yeah, Sonic, I think you're right. It really is all over the place, and it's hard to make sense of, even if you're trying to use it in some meaningful way.
Oh yeah.
So I guess one final question that I have is how can we do better? Is there a better path forward? Is there a way that we can improve the way that we're evaluating threat actors? And
I'm glad that you asked that question because I've for the most part I think the best way forward is we need to get everyone to agree to do this and share the information.
So you're talking about some kind of a global
geopolitical data sharing.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun to try and implement.
Yeah, and either that or either through dialogues. Because the thing is, if we don't have constant dialogues, we're going to run into a loop.
So are you saying that your future vision would be more getting rid of the APT kind of group thing and actually start going after individual threat actors? Because to your point of a future without APTs, I don't see a future where there's not somebody trying to do some type of offensive computer act.
There is going. I mean, again, like I said, it's an idea. Unless we start right now and having dialogues and keep the information flowing and agree that setting aside differences and agree like, hey, we want to have this, and we don't want to come to a point where nation state actors get in and muscle in their way and like, hey, this information, we need to take this information, and you wouldn't even know. It's just kind of like it's going to go through your bloodstreams, and before you know it, you're like, oh my god, it's already there, and the information has already been taken. So what do I do? You think about it. With the use of AI, and what are your thoughts if very soon people are able to cognitively condition AI to be the attacker? And it's coming.
Shit, man, they've already done that. Hutch.
So I think this is obviously where we go full circle and we ask if AI Steve from the UK Parliament executes cyber attacks, does that constitute an APT or a nation state level attack?
I think this is a really amazing concept. I agree. I don't know if something, and I'm just throwing MITRE out there as just an alternate framework. But the one thing I would say, in regards to all of the things that you brought forward today, Sonic, is we need something that is repeatable and consistent. Oh, yeah. And, everybody needs to be judged by the same characteristics and actions. Because, I remember when I first started hearing about APTs back in the mid 2000s, like you said, and it's always, originally it was, if in order to be an APT, you need to be it needs to be involve ransomware, or it had to have some type of reverse connection back to the attacker. And the truth is, there are some attacks that it will display certain TTPs, some that won't. But the fact that Group A can do the exact same thing that Group B does, and they don't get the designation. I think that does a great disservice to the industry, and I think we need to really kind of take a look at what we're just accepting off the cuff as, the top security news out there. We need to know where that information's coming from, and if it's actually legitimate, or if there's any type of bias, or somebody's trying to do something with it to either, to Hutch's point, get away from, I don't want to pay insurance, the cyber insurance payout, or I want to push my product. I think there needs to be a lot more eyes on this, and I think we need to get some conversations going. Absolutely. And I just wanted to say thank you for coming on and sharing it with us.
No problem. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on board.
Yeah, this has been great. Really appreciate it, Sonic.
Thank you.
So I guess unless you got anything else, Hutch, I think I'm good for today.
If you're in the Houston area, catch all three of us at HUSECCon coming up. Fantastic local cybersecurity conference.
One of the best ones around. And, And it is, I know that out of the three of us, Hutch is the one that looks the most, scary and hard to approach. But I just want everybody to know he is very, very friendly. And, come on up and say hi. We're, me, everybody likes me. But, Hutch is the scary one. His personality, he just looks mean on TV, on the TV and on the recording. But he's really a friendly guy.
Just a big teddy bear.
With that, I got nothing else.
All
See
right,
you guys.
Cyber Cognition over and out.
Peace.
Cheers.
Peace.